Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhai Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone to our Bhakti Vaibhava. We're on Canto 2 and we're studying today chapter number 4. So in the previous chapters we heard, first of all, chapter 1, we heard about worshipping the Lord in impersonal form, the universal form. And then in the second chapter we heard about understanding the Lord through Paramatma. And then in the third chapter we heard that we can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a person, even though we have material desires, or we're pure devotees, or we desire liberation, whatever reason we have, we can worship the Supreme Lord. So in this way, Sutta Goswami was encouraging Maharaj Parikshit to engage himself fully in remembering the Supreme Lord. And after that, then we heard Shonaka Rishi glorify the hearing process, right? So Shonaka Rishi was speaking, and that was going back to the sages in Naimisharanya, and Shonaka Rishi was describing how people who don't hear, how they're really condemned, right? We heard about their ear holes are like the holes of a snake, and their tongues are like the croaking of the frog, all of these things. If they don't use their legs to go to the temple, then the legs are like the stumps of a tree stuck in the ground. And so Shonaka Rishi was describing the eagerness which devotees should have, how they should be very, very enthusiastic and eager to hear about Krishna. So Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Srila Sukadeva Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. So that's the first verse. And in that first verse, the Maharaj Parikshit is described as being satim. Satim meaning chaste, that he was chaste. His mind was chaste to the thought of Lord Krishna. He was very faithful. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport mentions about two things which are very important for someone to have that kind of chastity, to make his mind very chaste. Two things are very helpful. One is they should be born in a family of devotees. So Maharaj Parikshit had that advantage, that he was born, of course, in the family of the Pandavas, the grandson of Arjuna, the son of Abhimanyu. So he was born in the family of great devotees. And the second thing is, who knows what's the second thing?
Blessings of a bona fide spiritual master.
Right, the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master. So Maharaj Parikshit was really very fortunate that at the moment, at the end, when with his cursing, that Sukadeva Goswami had appeared to give his blessings and to guide Maharaj Parikshit in his preparation for leaving the world. It makes me think about His Holiness Kadamba Kanna Swami Maharaj, who's preparing himself also for his imminent departure. And he's also there in the association of his spiritual master. Jayadvaita Swami is there with him, guiding him and encouraging him, keeping him in consciousness of Krishna. Association, very important. And we know also Madhavendra Puri at the end of his life, he was blessed with the association of Ishwara Puri. Ishwara Puri was his disciple, and Ishwara Puri was faithfully serving him. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, at the end of his life, he was calling the devotees. He was called the devotee, everyone come. He didn't care who, he just called everyone, you can come and be with me. And Prabhupada liked to hear the devotees. He liked reports from the devotees about their preaching, and he liked to hear the devotees do kirtan. And in this way, Prabhupada enjoyed the association of his devotees, his disciples. All right, now, let's see, what's the next slide? So Sutta Goswami continues the narration. Maharaj, this is from the first verse. Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Srila Sukadeva Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. So we mentioned about Maharaj Parikshit's faithfulness, his chaste mind, faith, very important. You have to have firm faith. Your faith must be strong. We have to get firm. If we don't have firm faith, you have to develop firm faith. You have to develop it by hearing from a bona fide spiritual master, or you may have been fortunate enough to have been born in a family of devotees. From the beginning of life, you have that opportunity. Then it becomes natural. So Maharaj Parikshit, because of his devotion to Lord Krishna, when the curse came upon him, he accepted it and he gave up everything. He gave up all of the attachments which we have. He gave up all of his attachments. Prabhupada talks about the attachment to horses and elephants, and maybe you have a big herd of cows and so on. You could become attached to these things. Prabhupada mentions how in the modern time, people, they don't have horses so much or elephants, but what they do have is cars. They have their automobiles, and we're very attached to cars. You know, material world, people are very attached to these things, motor cars. Of course, they cost so much money. You spend so much money to buy a car, then you have to maintain it, and you have to look after it. And you have to get new tires all the time. You have to constantly check the balancing of the tires. You have to service the engine. People will clean the car and polish the car. And so Prabhupada used to speak about that, how if somebody was driving and somehow maybe there was an accident, then the person would jump out the car and say, "You hit me, you hit me." So Prabhupada was pointing out how people identify with the body, and they identify also with the vehicle. Prabhupada would talk about how the person in the ambassador car would he would be blowing his horn on the car and saying, "Get out of my way, rickshaw. Rickshaw, get out of my way. This is ambassador. I am ambassador. Get out of the way." Like this, we become very attached to these things. We identify with these things. And nowadays, of course, we have things like computers and mobile phones, and we're very attached to these things. But at the time of death, you have to give up all of these things. We have to give up any kind of attachment. And we saw Srila Prabhupada do that before he left the world. He gave everything away. He gave his watch away. He gave rings away, which he was wearing, which he had on his finger. He gave the one ring to I think George Harrison was to be given one ring, like that. So Prabhupada said, he said, "I came to the world with nothing. I want to leave it with nothing." We don't want to be attached. So Maharaj Parikshit, he was able to give up all kinds of karmakandi activities. He stopped performing all kinds of rituals. He didn't worry about anything except fixing his mind on Krishna. So being able to do that was possible by Maharaj Parikshit because he was a devotee, because he'd been devoted to Krishna, and because he'd had that upbringing and he practiced throughout his life. So at the time of death, it was not a problem for him. Now, if one is not so accustomed to that, then what should you do? What should you do if you're not a devotee and the time of death is coming? What should you do? Any suggestions? Yes?
We should surround ourselves with the association of devotees. We are ourselves not that.
If you're not a devotee, do you think you're going to be able to get the association of devotees at the end of life? I mean, I think you may be lucky, but I don't know.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So many of the family, the tradition is that once you turn this 70 or something like that, you give away all your properties, everything, and have a minimum things to stay, so that there should not be any further litigations when you leave this world. So that is where mostly it is being followed in materialist. Otherwise, it creates a lot of problem when you leave. This is.
So have you done that yet?
I have not yet turned 70, Maharaj.
Are you preparing for that?
Mostly I have done that.
Okay. Yes, we have to give up all these things. We have to prepare to give up. They should give away everything. Get free from all the attachments. And you have to also get away from the family, actually. You don't want to be surrounded by women at the end of life. Generally, when the person is leaving the world, like Srila Prabhupada, we didn't have women ever come in this room. It was always just men. You don't want to be seeing women at the end of life. So that kind of renunciation is required. All right, so the first 4 verses describe Maharaj Parikshit accepted the instructions of Sukadeva Goswami and fixed his mind on Krishna. Of course, he was a devotee. He'd been thinking of Krishna. Remember, as a child in the womb, he'd been saved by Lord Krishna. So he got the name Parikshit, meaning examiner, because he was constantly looking to see again that wonderful form which he had seen when he was within the womb of the mother. So the first 4 verses, Maharaj Parikshit is accepting the instructions of Sukadeva Goswami, and he's questioning. He has inquiries, right? So that takes 5 to 10. Maharaj Parikshit inquires about Shristi Tattva, about the process of creation, the subject matter of this chapter, Shristi Tattva. He's not asking immediately, tell me about Krishna and the gopis. Let me hear Rasa Lila. But he wants to know about Shristi Tattva. And then the rest of the chapter, we will hear Sukadeva Goswami's prayers, which are recited by Srila Prabhupada. There's a recording. Srila Prabhupada chants Sukadeva Goswami's prayers. If you have the Prabhupada folio, you can hear Prabhupada reciting all the prayers from this chapter, with at least Sukadeva Goswami's prayers from this chapter. Each of the verses, Prabhupada chants them, sings them. Okay, so inspired by Shonaka Rishi's eagerness, Sutta Goswami continues the narration. From the previous chapter, Shonaka Rishi was eager. He talked about how we have to be eager to hear. And now Sutta Goswami is continuing. So he applies his concentration faithfully upon Krishna. This a quote from the 5th verse of the 4th chapter. The great test, the crucial test. When a hungry man is given food to eat, he feels satiation of hunger and the pleasure of dining simultaneously. Thus, he does not have to ask whether he has actually been fed or not. The crucial test of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is that one should get positive enlightenment by such an act. You can see this statement of Srila Prabhupada from the purport is like a paraphrase of a well-known verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Do you know that verse? But where eating food, then you give up your hunger. As you go on eating, you feel satiation of hunger and you take pleasure in eating. In the same way, when we practice devotional service, in the course of our devotional service, we should develop devotion and detachment from the material world. These things should come simultaneously as we go on in the practice of devotional service. Right? Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktya anyatra chaisa traika kala. Like that. This is the verse. Prabhupada's purports are often like that. He will take a statement, another verse, and he will just paraphrase it. So Prabhupada said this is a test of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. that we should get positive enlightenment by such an act. Just like we were in the last class, you may remember we spoke about the change in heart. The change in heart, that we should actually feel an awakening, a change. And so similarly, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, it should work in a similar manner to the chanting of the holy name, that we should get that positive enlightenment. We become more attached to Krishna. And attachment to Krishna means detachment from the material world. So Maharaj Parikshit was a nice example of this. He was fully absorbed in hearing about Krishna. He was not eating. You know, often you give a class in the morning and people are always, what time is prasadam? They're always thinking, I wonder what for prasadam this morning, you know. You're trying to give a Bhagavatam class, but people are just simply sitting and thinking, what am I going to have for my breakfast? They're not much focused on hearing. Of course, today's Ekadasi, so it's a good day for people to be more focused on hearing, less attention to eating, and more concentration on hearing and chanting. So Maharaj Parikshit was fully absorbed in that way. And Prabhupada in his purport, he talks about Maharaj Yudhisthira, that Maharaj Yudhisthira is a wonderful example, that he used everything for the service of Krishna. You don't have to give up everything if you're able to use it all in the service of Krishna. Sorry, somebody calling me. You don't have to give up material things if they're being used in the service of Krishna. If you're attached to them for your sense gratification, then you should give them up. But if you're actually positive about them, that it's all for the service of Krishna, then you don't have to give them up. So we try to practice Krishna consciousness in that manner. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya uchate. That actual renunciation is in relation to Krishna. We don't have to give up what is useful for our service to Krishna. But we do have to be careful. We become too attached to material things, material opulence, position, and so many things of the material world can influence us. So Prabhupada writes about, in the Nectar of Devotion, he writes about one man, Lal Baba. He was a businessman in Calcutta, and he gave up everything, and he went and lived in Vrindavan, and he would go and beg from people who were more or less like his enemies. So in this way, he was cultivating humility, a great test. We're talking here about the crucial test. We have to develop that detachment from the false ego, the detachment from the material things. So hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we can understand how well we're hearing it by how we get enlightenment. Okay, we'll go ahead. So here's Maharaj Parikshit's questions. He's inquiring from the Lord. First of all, how does the Lord create the universe, which are inconceivable even for the demigods? One point which Prabhupada notes in the purport from this is that at least Maharaj Parikshit, of course Maharaj Parikshit, he knows these things, but he wants to hear. He wants to hear from Sukadeva Goswami. So he has put this question to Sukadeva Goswami, but he knows these things. He's a pure devotee himself. But by the arrangement of the Lord, he's in this position, he's preparing for death. And he's teaching all of us how we have to understand everything about the Lord. So his first question is, how does the Lord create the universes? So Prabhupada notes that common man, they think the universe just came about automatically. They don't believe there's a creation. They won't accept that there's a creator, that there's an intelligent personality behind the universe. They never even consider how did it all come about. But Maharaj Parikshit, he's asking, how does the Lord create the universes? So he understands there is a person, there is a creation, there's a process of creation. And it is not just chance. Prabhupada said chance, that is only for fools. There's no such thing as chance anywhere in the world, in the creation. Okay, second point. How does the Lord engage his energies and expansions in the maintenance and destruction of the universes? Maharaj Parikshit wants to understand about the different energies of the Lord, as well as his expansions. Why would Maharaj Parikshit ask these kind of questions? What would be the reason for it? Would somebody like to tell me? Put your hand up if you know. Why Maharaj Parikshit is asking these questions? Diti Gopi, Jyoti Gopi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I just think that he, as you mentioned previously, you were mentioning that he didn't directly want to jump on the 10th canto that explained me about relationship of Krishna with gopis. He wanted to understand how it came into existence, and every inquisitive mind, it always wants to decode about how creation, and it's all activities related to Krishna. So that's why he first wanted to know about creation and then dive into different rasas.
Yeah, but I would like to know why. Why you would want to know about creation.
No clue, Maharaj.
Okay, right. We'll ask somebody else. What about, who's this? Diksha Ahuja?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisance. Maharaj, as per my understanding, in the previous chapter, Virat Roop was discussed. So after that, these inquiries are coming. So one point could be this, that Maharaj Parikshit wants to know. And second point, I could understand, like Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam. So he wants to know the activities of the Lord so that he can go back to God.
Yes, he wants to know, but there are so many activities of the Lord. Why he particularly asks about creation? That's my question. Maybe we'll ask this. Who's this? Chitta Hari Krishna. Chitta Hari Krishna Prabhu. Yes, Chitta Hari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Maharaj. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhu. Now I can hear you. Yeah.
I was thinking that here, because people know that God is great, but they don't know how great He is, and that's why they equate Him with demigods, and they cannot. Right? First, before entering into internal energy of Krishna or his transcendental pastimes, they should understand how his external energy is working in this material world, and He is controller of that. So, how great He is, if that understanding they approach these internal pastimes, they will be able to appreciate it better. That's why it is explained here, creation aspect.
Yeah, we should know how great. Now, how great is He, though? Yes, it's true. We should know how great He is, but we have to understand particularly how great He is, as you say. And how great is He? Do you know Rati Prada? Is it Rati Prada? Radha?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes,
Maharaj, my
Krishna.
answer was similar to Prabhuji, and that he wanted to establish the supreme position of the Lord by asking the questions on creation, so that everybody who reads may know the exact position of the Lord, that he is the supreme personality of Godhead, and then he should be able to understand the 10th canto.
Okay.
Otherwise, he might consider Krishna as an ordinary boy.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Let's hear Nimai. Oh, Nilima. Nilima.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj is knowing Krishna from before his birth. Like he is remembering Krishna when he is in his mother womb. So he is remembering, Parikshit Maharaj was remembering Krishna as that small Rupa. So he wanted to know in detail that about the Krishna, everything he wanted to know, I think.
Okay. Yes, he wanted to know everything about Krishna. But what he really wants to bring out is the fact that Lord Krishna has inconceivable potencies. Hearing, as it's mentioned here, that even the demigods cannot, it's inconceivable to the demigods how the Lord creates the universe. So this is the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that He has this achintya shakti, inconceivable powers. And also, another reason why he wants to bring out this point, that the Lord is inconceivably powerful, because he could understand that in the future, particularly in the Kali Yuga, there will be many imposters who are claiming to be the Supreme Lord, who want to take the position of the Lord and claim themselves as an avatar, or as the original Lord himself. So he wants to establish that if somebody is actually the Lord, if he's really the Supreme Lord, then he should have these inconceivable powers, and he should be able to do such things as create entire universes. So this is why Sukad Maharaj Parikshit's asking this kind of question. He wants to bring, because later on, Sukadeva Goswami is going to go on to describe about the Lord and the pastimes of his internal potency. The pastimes of creation are all the external potency of the Lord. But the internal potency, that will be described later on in the 10th canto. And in order to understand the pastimes of the Lord in his internal potency, one first of all has to understand his inconceivable potency. That he does have this incredible, just powers far beyond anything we can even begin to understand. And then you can go on to understand Krishna's pastimes. But without understanding the Lord's pastimes, we think of him like an ordinary person, and then people will think they can imitate the Lord. So in the very beginning, Sukadeva, Maharaj Parikshit is bringing out this point that he wants all of us, and he wants to hear from Sukadeva Goswami how the Lord actually does this business of creation. Okay, and then third question, does the Lord directly deal with the modes of nature, or he acts through his expansions? So I was talking about the Lord's internal and external potencies. Prabhupada gives the example about the king. He may have affairs in governing the state. He'll go into his court and he'll give orders about what should be done in the kingdom and how to take care of different problems in the kingdom. But the internal potency would be like what goes on in the king's palace. What are the affairs of the king, for example, with his wives and so on? You're not going to hear about what happens with the king with his wives, how he's getting along with his wives. Are they all cooperating with each other, and are they faithful to the king? All of the affairs of the king with his wives and family members, that's the internal potency. The external potency is how the king deals with the kingdom. And so the king's affairs are private. So similarly, the Lord's pastimes are private. They come later on in the 10th canto, after one has first of all heard about the Lord's different potencies, how he does the work of creation and how he arranges everything, and how there's so many expansions and so many avatars and so many different functions which the Lord is doing, which the Lord is overseeing in the external potency. So we first have to understand that. And as we hear these things, then we become more and more devoted. We hear about the Lord and his inconceivable powers, and this way we become more devoted to him. And then we become more qualified to understand the affairs of the internal potency. Right? Can somebody read this? Krishna's relationship with the material energy. Someone read?
An inexperienced boy may be struck with wonder by seeing the impersonal actions of electronics or many other wonderful things conducted by electrical energy. But an experienced man knows that behind the action is a living man who creates such energy.
Yes, but let me see, is there another? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Similarly, the so-called scholars and philosophers of the world may, by mental speculation, present so many utopian theories about the impersonal creation of the universe. But an intelligent devotee of the Lord, by reading the Bhagavad Gita, can know that behind the creation is the hand of the Supreme Lord. Just as in the generating electrical powerhouse, there is the resident engineer.
Okay, yes. Prabhupada's giving this simple example that electricity it's coming from the power station. There's a power station from where the electricity comes. It's the unintelligent person puts a plugs into the power supply without understanding that the connection is being made to the power station. And in the power station, there are engineers and they're arranging for the generation of the electricity. So in the same way, common people, they look at the material world and they cannot understand that there must be some creator behind everything. They're thinking, sometimes they give different theories, atheistic theories about how life came about. We have the Big Bang theory, or everything came from the white hole, or everything, life is, then the theory of evolution, and so many different theories, all speculations by atheistic people who have no common sense to understand there must be some intelligent personalities behind the world who are arranging for all of this. So the example was very important, that just like electricity comes from the powerhouse, and so the material energy is coming from the Supreme Lord. It is the external potency of the Lord. And that external potency is under the direction of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, how does Krishna describe the material energy being under the control of the Lord? What's the verse? Yes, right. That's the verse, right. So material nature is moving under my direction, O son of Kunti. So it's not independent. There's some control there. All right, someone read, please.
The conclusion is, therefore, that a serious devotee must first approach a spiritual master who is not only well versed in the Vedic literatures, but is also a great devotee with factual realization of the Lord and his different energies. A bona fide spiritual master like Shukadev Goswami does not speak about the Lord only in the matter of his internal potencies, but also explains how he associates with his external potencies.
Yes, wait, keep reading.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti offers his good counsel to the interested Vaishnavas when he says that they should not be interested in hearing only about the Lord's activities like Rasa Leela, but must be keenly interested in his pastimes, in his features of Purusha avatars, in the connection with Shrishti Tattva, creational functions, following the examples of Maharaj Parikshit, the ideal disciple, and Shukdev Goswami, the ideal spiritual master. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.10 purport.
Thank you. Yes, it said on one occasion, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada went to Radhakund and he was to give a lecture to all the Babajis. So all the many Babajis, they came to hear his lecture. But when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur began to speak about the external potency, about the affairs of creation, he began to speak from the Upanishads and so on, then the Babajis, many of them, they just got up and left because they didn't want to hear. They thought they were so advanced that they didn't need to hear these things. They just wanted to hear Leelas. They just wanted to hear about the Lord's pastimes with the gopis and so on. So they didn't like to hear the issue from the Upanishads. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati could understand that these kind of people, they're actually neophyte devotees. They could not appreciate that the external potencies of the Lord are also the pastimes of the Lord. So it's important for everyone to understand this whole process of creation and how the Lord's different energies are functioning, particularly how the Lord in his feature as the Purusha avatars is arranging for this whole creation. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur himself is a great devotee, and he talks about Rasa Lila, but he doesn't just only talk about Rasa Lila. That comes after you have studied all the preliminary things. So we have to impress this on people. They have to hear the basic knowledge. Don't just jump to the intimate pastimes of the Lord, but hear about his affairs with the material energy. All right? Yes, someone can read here?
Sutta Goswami said, when Shukadev Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy of the personality of Godhead, he then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to reply properly he spoke thus.
Right. So, Sutta Goswami describing how Sukadeva Goswami was requested to describe this creative energy of the Lord. So it's such a daunting topic, you know, someone asks you to speak on such a thing, and certainly Sukadeva Goswami cannot just simply say, oh no, I don't want to speak on this, I just want to speak on gopis. Sukadeva Goswami is obliged to reply, to answer the question of Maharaj Parikshit. And remember, there's an assembly of other people there also. There's so many others there. So they will all be benefited by hearing the pastimes of the Lord. Not only just simply the internal pastimes, but the external potencies in relation to the creation. So Sukadev Goswami has been asked to describe this. So how does he respond? He immediately prays to the Lord to empower him that he can speak appropriately. And that's why he offers his prayers. Just like before we speak Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning, or maybe you're speaking Bhagavad Gita, maybe you're asked to give a Bhagavad Gita class. So generally the procedure is that before we begin to speak, we will first of all recite prayers. We will recite our Guru Pranam Mantra, and we may also recite Ummajnana and Bandeham. These different prayers may be recited. I know His Holiness Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj, when he would give a class, he would begin reciting verses for 10-15 minutes before he would begin the class. He would like to take blessings by remembering the potency of the Lord. Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, he has one prayer which he likes to recite. Are any of you disciples of Jayapataka Swami Maharaj? Anybody there? No? Anyway, yes? Okay, do you know the verse, Prabhu? Is it Mataji? Do you know the verse?
Karoti.
Yes, right, that verse.
Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum langayate girim, yat kripa tamaham bande, Sri Guru dinatarinam.
Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram.
Paramananda. Madhava.
What's the meaning? Do you know?
By the mercy of the Guru, even a person who cannot speak, and he can speak, and a person who is a lame, he can walk the mountains.
Yes, by the mercy of spiritual master, or a lame man can cross mountains, a dumb man can recite poetry, a blind man can see the stars. By the mercy of the spiritual master, like that. You know, every devotee will have their own particular prayers which they like to recite before giving the class, right? I assume you're all giving classes sometimes, right? Are you giving classes sometimes, Rati Prada?
Yes, Maharaj, sometimes.
Yes. So what, do you recite these prayers when you give a class?
Maharaj, I recite the Mangalacharan, which is in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, all those prayers.
Yes, right, that's common. The prayers which are there in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. What about Padmarada? Padmarada was there, she disappeared. Okay. Okay, any questions so far? Yes? Yes, Maharaji, have a question? Is it? Diksha, Mataji, have a question?
Yes, Maharaj, I have a question that while you were explaining that why Parikshit Maharaj asked the question regarding the creation, Maharaj, I could not grasp it so much. Can you please repeat that point, that why Parikshit Maharaj asked such question regarding the creation and regarding the energies of the Lord?
Yes, okay. There were two reasons I gave. One reason was that he wants to impress on everyone, as well as himself, that the Lord has inconceivable potencies, achintya shakti. His potencies are inconceivable. It's very important to understand the pastimes of the Lord, that we have to accept that there are such things as inconceivable potencies, powers which are beyond our comprehension. We give the example, just like the sun produces so much energy in the form of heat and light, and somehow it's never exhausted. We have a fire, we have to continually put fuel onto the fire to get the heat and light. But every day, constantly, the sun is emitting inconceivable amounts of heat and light. And with over thousands and millions of years, the sun is continuing to give us that heat and light and warmth, which make life bearable. And without the light of the heat, without the heat and light of the sun, life would be unbearable. The whole universe would be dark, and we'd be freezing. So there are such things in the world as inconceivable potencies. We're not really aware of these things. We just take everything for granted. Oh, it's just there. Oh, you know, people say don't ask, just accept, and just take advantage. Why asking so many questions? We're discouraged from being inquisitive. But Maharaj Parikshit wants to understand, by hearing about the process of creation through the different Purusha avatars, you can understand more of the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Lord. And the second reason I gave was that the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit wants to show that the Supreme Lord, that if someone is actually God, they have to have these inconceivable powers. They have to be able to do things beyond, far beyond anything which we may think of in the material world. They have to have inconceivable powers. They have to be able to do what we think is impossible. Because there's so many people will claim to be God. So it's important to establish that if somebody is actually God, they have these inconceivable powers, and they can actually create. It was described even the demigods are bewildered to see the creation, to see the work of creation. Does that help, Maharaji?
Yes, thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll take a break.
Maharaj, I had one question.
Yes.
In verse 1, Prabhupada writes in the purport, and we were also discussing that to become a pure devotee of Lord, two things are very much essential. First was namely having a chance to be born in the family of devotee, and the second was having the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master. So Maharaj, how do we understand the first point as in having a chance to be born in the family of a devotee? When we have also seen in Shastras that there were devotees in past whose parents, they were not not even devotees. We see Haridas Thakur. We also see many Srila Prabhupada disciples. Their parents necessarily weren't devotees, but yet they are pure devotees. So how do we understand this point, Maharaj?
Well, we understand that the blessings of the spiritual master is more important than just simply the seminal birth. When we approach the spiritual master, we're given the second birth. The second birth, the spiritual birth. The spiritual birth is more important than the material birth. Well, to be born in a devotee family is certainly an advantage. You may be fortunate, but it's not 100% essential. You have the second birth, you have the contact with the spiritual master. And that is what is very important. Generally, the Shastras will speak about the mercy of the spiritual master. There's a Bengali saying, they say that every janame janabi sabi pita mata paya Krishna Guru nahi mili bhaja hari ai. That everyone has got a mother and father. The mata and pita, everyone has got that. The dogs, the birds, the fish, they all have a mother and father. But only the fortunate living entity has got a spiritual teacher, a guru. And by the grace of the guru, they can get Krishna. And we speak about Brahmanda Brahmite Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Ladapi. After moving through many universes, when we become fortunate, then we get the seed of devotion from the Guru. So it's the spiritual master, which the connection with the bona fide spiritual teacher, which is more important than just simply the birth in the family of devotees. The birth in the family of devotees can help. It's certainly good in some ways. But it's not 100% essential that if you have the blessings of a spiritual master, and as you said, there are many devotees. We're not from devotee families, but we have the blessings of the spiritual master, and we have taken shelter of the spiritual master. It's that connection with the pure devotee which is more powerful. You can be born in a devotee family and you can become very attached to the family. You just become attached to the mother and father and the family, and you forget about Krishna. So the birth in the devotee family is certainly, it can be very good. As Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and also our Bhaktivedanta Swami, they were both born in devotee families. So certainly there's some advantage there. They're both great souls. They both had that good birth. But it's not that everyone had that. As you said, there were other people. We know Narada Muni was the son of a maidservant, but he became a great devotee. Haridas Thakur, of course, was born in the Mohammedan family. Narottam Das Thakur was born in a royal family.
Prahlad Maharaj, the son of a demon.
Yes, Prahlad. And then you have also devotees like Garuda in the bird body, and you have Hanuman, the monkey body. And you know, they're great devotees. They didn't even have the human form of life, but they're great devotees. Any other examples we can think of? Okay. Any other questions there?
Thank you for answering, Maharaj. Thank
Okay. So we'll take a break for 5 minutes and we'll come back. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
How many people are in the class today?
23.
22.
Oh, everybody here, eh? Wow, good. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Let's see, next slide. Sukadev Goswami's prayers from text 11 up to 25. So Sukadeva Goswami's prayers begin with the glorification of the Lord, and then later on, then he will make his request. Some quotation of Srila Prabhupada from text number 16 of the purport. Simple for the simple. Attainment of this perfection of life is easily available to a pure devotee of the Lord without his undergoing any difficult method of perfection. Such a devotional life is full of kirtanam, smaranam, ikshanam, etc., as mentioned in the previous verse. One must therefore adopt this simple way of devotional life in order to attain the highest perfection available in any category of the human form of life in any part of the world. So sometimes people think, that self-realization must be very difficult. They think you have to undergo great austerities and perform great austerity or give huge amounts of charity, or maybe you have to study so much and acquire so much knowledge. But you can see here that Prabhupada is saying that it actually devotional service is simple, a simple way, and you can get the highest perfection. Simple in the sense that we simply have to chant, we have to performing kirtan, doing kirtan and hearing about Krishna, remembering Krishna, all of these things, they're not really difficult. But if we do them with a sincere heart, with the genuine desire that we want to please Krishna, then we can get the highest perfection. Far above any kind of perfection which could be achieved by jnana or karma or yoga. Just simply by devotion, you can get the highest thing. Prabhupada lecturing here from the first canto, 8th chapter, text number 35. So Prabhupada is describing, out of 12 authorities, Sukadeva Goswami is authority. Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. From the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. We have to follow the authority. So he says, simply by performing these processes, Shravanam, Kirtan, Vishnu, then what you are, Lokashya Sadyo Vidunoti Kaumasam. This material contamination will be washed off. Lokashya Sadya. When washed off? immediately, sit, immediately, no waiting, sadhya. This is Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada is describing to us how effective this process of Krishna consciousness is. That simply, if you take up this process, that very quickly you can get rid of the contamination. The material contamination can be removed. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. Other processes, like the process of knowledge, it says, Bahunam Yanmanam Ante Jnanavam Mam Prapajante. After many births and deaths, when one is actually in knowledge, then he will surrender to Krishna. But if we simply follow the authority, simply follow the example of these great devotees, we can also get the same result as they have achieved. We follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans. Right, this verse from in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's actually taken from the Mahabharata. There's a verse there in the Mahabharata. But the point is, you have to accept authority. So Maharaj Parikshit, he is submitting himself to Sukadeva Goswami. You have to be guided. There has to be some spiritual authority. Just like all of us, we accept a spiritual teacher. We take shelter of a spiritual master. We take initiation from him, and we go on and take instruction under the spiritual master. We have to follow the authority. Without following the authorities, then we get problems. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata guru. We have to have equal faith in both Guru and in Krishna. And then all the purports of the scriptures are revealed. But if we don't follow the authority, if we act independently and whimsically, then we get problems. So Srila Prabhupada is talking about this process, how just simply by practicing this process of hearing and chanting, that all the contamination will be washed off. And his Prabhupada said, immediately, no waiting. This is Krishna consciousness movement. So we are thinking, oh, it will take so long, I'm so fallen, I'm so conditioned, I'm so covered. But if we follow carefully, it doesn't have to take very long. And we see devotees. We've seen wonderful devotees. We saw, for example, His Holiness Bhakti Charuswami Maharaj. Now, Bhakti Charuswami Maharaj, he came to Krishna consciousness very quickly. He visited the temple. Now, I read his book, his biography about his life, and he was describing how he'd been meeting some different spiritual teachers, and he'd been thinking about what he wanted to get into, but then he met Krishna consciousness, and he met Prabhupada. He read Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, and he became convinced. And he came to the temple, and within a very short time, he became Bhakti Charuswami. Within a few months, practically, Prabhupada made him a sannyasi. And so that's an example about how it happens. And similarly also, then you have Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj. He came to Prabhupada. Of course, Bhakti Charu was special because he was a young man. Gaur Govinda Maharaj, when he came, he was already somewhat of a retired person. He'd been through family life and he was looking somewhere to devote himself. And Prabhupada immediately accepted him and put him in charge, made him a sannyasi. So sometimes Prabhupada would do these things. Within a short time, we see also Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. He'd been a devotee maybe about 2 years, and he became a sannyasi. And he was still young, very young. He was just just 21 or something when he became a sannyasi. Very young man. And so these are examples how people very quickly they can become advanced in spiritual life. It doesn't have to take any time, and they can come from any part of the world also. It's not that it's, oh, you have to be born in a Hindu family or like that. You have to be born in the devotee family. They can come from any part of the world. But if they take it seriously and they become very attentive in hearing and taking up the process, are very sincere, then they can achieve the highest perfection. Okay, and then the chapter then goes on, text 18, we hear in Prabhupada's purport that talks about the compassion of devotees. Here you can see a quote from text 18 purport. Even those who are constantly engaged in sinful acts are all corrigible to the standard of perfect human beings if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Jesus Christ and Muhammad, two powerful devotees of the Lord, have done tremendous service on behalf of the Lord on the surface of the globe. So Srila Prabhupada is talking about the compassion of the devotee, about the pure devotees, how the mercy of the pure devotee is so powerful and so important. And he gives the example of Lord Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad, how they have given shelter to so many devotees. They were devotees and they gave shelter to others and led them on a path to realize God, to come to know God. Of course, you may say so many things. Oh, they're all meat eaters. Oh, this, that. They don't follow strictly. But still, the example is there. That Lord Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, that they're teaching about devotion to God. Lord Jesus Christ, he has his the commandments. First commandment, to love God with all thy heart and all thy soul. So that kind of instruction is there. And we see also in the Mohammedan religion, how Prophet Muhammad taught the followers how they have to pray 5 times a day. So to get people to pray, so many followers, there's so many Christians and so many Muslims, and they practice their religion. Maybe the followers of Jesus Christ, they practice to a lesser extent than the Muslims. The Christians generally, they will go to church on Sunday. But The Muslim people, well, they will go to the mosque. Generally, they go on Friday. Friday is the Sabbath. But that's also changed in some places now, in some parts of the world. In the Middle East, I think they moved it to Sunday. Once a week they go to the mosque, but they do prayers. They do prayers 5 times a day. So, I don't know if they all do it, but they're supposed to. And then Christians, they're also supposed to pray to God. So certainly, the fact that people have so much faith in these people is very good. People the Christians have great faith in Lord Jesus. They say, Jesus died for the sins. Jesus died for our sins, something we often hear. And so that idea that somebody sacrificed their life for the sins of others, that is compassion. Of course, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we can give the example about Vasudeva Datta. And Prabhupada said Vasudeva Datta was hundreds and thousands of times more compassionate because his compassion extended to all living entities, not to just humans. So Prabhupada is appreciating the efforts of these 2 great devotees, that they have done tremendous service on behalf of the Lord on the surface of the globe. So that is very nice appreciation, that Prabhupada has so much appreciation for their efforts in promoting consciousness of God. Just getting people to have a religion, to have faith in God. It's a very big thing. Any comments on this? We should always be respectful to other people, to other religious beliefs. Krishna consciousness movement is non-sectarian. Now we accept that the absolute truth is, the highest truth is in our own scriptures, but there's also a lot of truth there in the Bible and in the Quran. I met one man in Calcutta who was he was teaching English at a university in Calcutta, and he was a Muslim, and he wrote a book comparing the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran. And he points out how there's so many common points made in both the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita. There's so much similarities between the 2 books. So like that, we want to be respectful to other traditions. We don't want to deny people that they have their belief. And it's good that they believe in God. They have a religion. Sometimes you meet people like that, they say, oh, I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim. We can say to them, oh, very good. You believe in God. That's very nice. You know, a lot of people today are just simply atheists. Okay, there's a couple of hands up. Let me see. Chitahari Prabhu, yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Pranam. Maharaj, as you were talking about other religions, I was thinking that actually when Srila Prabhupada used to say often that I have not come here to convert. I have come here to make Christian a good Christian. So many.
To make what?
I have come here to make Christian a good Christian.
Oh.
So I was feeling that actually the problem in today's world is that people don't follow either Christianity properly. The religion, as Prabhupada often quoted, that thou shalt not kill. This is the first instruction, first commandment, but they don't follow it. So If they follow it, then the world will become a better place automatically, even if they follow that Christian. Is it right understanding, Maharaj?
Yes, Prabhupada did say that, when we preach to like Christians, he said, if they cannot accept that you should not eat meat, then he said, don't waste any more time talking to them because you won't get anywhere. And so he said that the important point in presenting our philosophy to the Christian people is that they should not eat the carb.
I'm not able to hear you. Yes.
Maharaji, you are not audible.
No, no.
No, it's all right.
It's okay now?
Now audible, Maharaji.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, there was some problem with the network. Anyway, I was saying Prabhupada, when he met one cardinal in Paris, and the cardinal was arguing about eating meat. And Prabhupada didn't talk about anything else. He only talked about meat eating, that you must stop the meat eating, and that it's wrong to kill. It's wrong to kill, especially the cow.